سلام بچه ها، سلام به همگی. سلام سلام. سلام بچه ها، تا مهمونمون بیاد در خدمتتون هستم. سلام به همگی بچه ها، منتظر هستم مهمونمون اضافه بشن. We are waiting for Joe to join us and then we can start, so it may take 1 or 2 minutes so that she's going to be connected to us. And we're going to have her comments on how to study for performance management, study tips that she's going to share with you, hopefully. I'm waiting for her to join. سلام بچه ها به همگی، منتظر مهمونمون هستم که اضافه بشن به جمع ما. یه مشکل کوچیکی واسهشون پیش اومده، یه مقدار دیرتر اضافه میشن. در رابطه با لایو امروز بگم که خب اومدن. در رابطه با performance management tips قرار با هم صحبت بکنیم. Joe, I'm going to send you. Hello Joe, how are you?
Everything's fine? Hi Evan, how are you?
All right, thank you very much. Everything's fine.
Great to see you.
Great to see you too. I'm so glad to have you here and your support is highly appreciated. I was waiting for you so that I just explained to students that today we are going to discuss on performance management tips. But before that, I think because you're new to the attendees and to the webinar, to the live session guests, it would be better if you just introduce yourself to them so that they can be familiar with you and the services that you're going to provide to them. Thank you very much.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Jo Tuffle. I'm a PM tutor at FME Learn Online. I've been teaching ACCA for umpteen years, over 15 now. I started out after I had a career in industry, started out as an auditor, then went into industry and did a performance management role. So hence I'm very passionate about this subject. And I've done what we have been practicing in the PM exam. I actually have done quite a few of these techniques, not all of them, but I've used them in practice. So I know that you're not just learning something that you're not going to use if you want to become a management accountant. And so my sort of focus is on making that real to people in my courses, etc. But I used to have a classroom. So a bit like you would have done. I mean, you're doing classroom teaching, are you, or are you online now? Oh, cool.
Yes, I'm online, but I think that it was an interruption in the, yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, so I'm basically used to have a classroom provider. It was a Platinum ACCA provider. So but then when the pandemic hit, I moved online and I decided to go independent and work with FME instead as an independent tutor. And there's a group of us which cover all the exams, and we basically teach to everybody globally.
That's
So
really
I'm passionate about supporting students. So it's all about personal support with me, and it's all about making sure that you get the right advice in your studies, which is tailored to you, because not everybody learns in the same way. And I think one size doesn't fit all, shall we say. So yeah, that's really about me. That's why I'm teaching online and able to teach everybody all across the world, because wonderfully online allows us to do that, doesn't it? Gosh, there's lots of
yeah,
joy in it.
exactly. Yeah. Lots of students are joining us. I think they're gonna be more at maybe in continue of the program. And we're so pleased to have you among us. And I think FME is an approved learning partner for ACC as well, gold approved learning partner, as I know. Yes, because
Yeah,
I checked it before the program. Yeah, so
yeah,
that's really
no,
nice too.
yeah, approved learning provider. But they become bigger over the last 2 years as more and more top tutors have joined them. So we have PQ awarded. Have you heard of PQ magazine? It's a UK
Yes,
magazine, which we do write lots of articles for, and a lot of them have been put forward as PQ Lecturer of the Year, as is James Wright, as we remember.
yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember him. And I think the latest article you published was regarding the target costing, because you just shared it on your Instagram. I was
Yeah,
wondering. Yes.
yeah.
So
Well, actually,
I
it was
suggest
my
this.
limiting factors one, which was my latest one, but the target costing was the one before that, I think. Trying to remember, I've written quite a few.
That's good. So I'm going to also share the link for them so that they can read that article, or at least they can purchase that magazine to actually read the articles that you guys have shared there on PQ Magazine. Jude, students are coming. So as you know, today we are going to discuss on performance management. Firstly, I believe that if you just mention what performance management is about, and then we can enter to the topic. So what is actually this performance management? Many students around the globe are struggling with that. As we just checked the pass rates, it's around 38% of students who can pass this exam per exam seat. So what is the reason that many students are struggling with this paper, and how should they overcome this fear that whether or not they can pass this paper?
Yeah, so I mean, you're correct. It is one of the lowest. The only other one is audit, which is lower, but
Yes.
audit always gets the wooden spoon. But I think the PM exam suffers from the fact that it used to be F5, yeah, and students used to go through the numbers, and so they traditionally are still thinking it was F5. You don't have to do PM first, and I would actually recommend that you don't do PM first. I think it would be a better mix to start with something like tax or FR, because it's an easier way into those skills papers. And the problem is it's quite a big step up from the law paper. The law paper is much more straightforward. It used to be written and it wasn't then, but it is more straightforward now. And so it's the first real challenge that students get from the step up from the earlier stages. And you need to build, unfortunately, I call it the PM mountain. You need to build the fear up front. There is a lot to cover, and there's a lot of detail and techniques to learn. So MA used to be, I would say MA is a bit more of a costing exam. Yeah. And PM, people still think of it as a costing exam, and it's not. It's definitely an application exam. Oh, you're back. Sorry. I,
Yeah, I'm back actually. Sorry, it was a problem with my internet. Sorry for that.
okay. It's
Sorry, it was. Yeah, it sometimes happens.
I've
Sorry.
just been whittering on. I've been whittering on. That's fine. So I got to the point where you left me, where I was saying that it's a real step up, and you have to build the fear up front. We call it the PM mountain. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so what students are often finding is they don't take it seriously enough and realize that they think that they can just do all the questions in the exam kit and effectively learn the answers and then pass this exam. And that's not going to be the case, I'm afraid. You've got to learn technique and theory and then be able to apply it. So my top tip often is for students when they're doing questions, first time, right, you should have learned the theory, so you should have your notes next to you while you do a question, so you can use that theory to apply to the question. And then if you don't still get the answer, then you can obviously look at the answer. But what you then must do is note down everything, the process that the answer did, not the numbers, but the process and the theory that you would have used. So you have a crib sheet for the next time you come up with a similar question. And no questions are the same, as you know. And I can't guarantee you'll get a similar question in the exam, but you will get a technique and theory the same.
Yeah, I see. So can we say that the first tip for them is to go through the past papers to understand which areas is going to be asked by the examiner, and then through that they can have, for example, draw a path for themselves. Like, for example, we need to put more focus or concentration on these areas, and then we can, for example, start our studying. Is it helpful for them to first, for example, check the past papers to understand which areas is going to be asked mostly by the examiners?
Well, to be honest, no. I would say you use the past papers to test your application skills. But what I would say is the examiner is definitely not repeating some of those past questions. That we're not seeing that happen. I'm not hearing it happen when students come out of the exam room. They come out the exam room saying they're completely different questions. But what they are saying is they're the same techniques. So my focus would be, first of all, when you're learning the techniques, really be really strict on yourself, having some notes about, for instance, when you're learning a pricing question, there's a set process to a pricing question that you can't really deviate from it. You find the pricing function, you find the A and the B in the pricing function, and then you find the marginal revenue that equals marginal cost. So there's a process, and then you find the optimum price and the optimum quantity from that. And there is a process to that. So you need to write that process down. You do a question, learning the process, and then you don't learn the answer to that question, but you learn that, take that process, and then you apply it to the next one that's similar, or another pricing question. So yeah, it's obviously I'm recommending doing past papers, but I'm not telling you that if you do all the past papers on the site, which is in the CBEs, that you'll pass the exam, because they don't cover all the syllabus. So you really do need to go through each technique that is in the syllabus and make sure you know how to do that. And the way to do that is to, is like I say, is to just continue challenging yourself by looking at new questions, which you'll get from revision kits, etc. But absolutely, I mean, I would recommend repeating things, but what I don't want people doing is, which I hear time and time again, is that, I've done that question so many times, I've practically learned the answer. And I was like, well, that's not helping you now. So you now need to work out, whether why you can't apply it to a similar question. And it's because you've learned the answer rather than the technique.
Exactly. One question here is that when you are discussing about the procedure that we have in order to revise the areas that we have covered in the study text, like, for example, doing the revision kit and the rest of the things, I don't know whether you ever or not, but CBA examinations are held in Iran for less than 2 years. It's been around 1.5 years that CBA examinations are taking place here. So many students, when they are revising, they still use paper and pen, not computer, not Excel, not the practice area that ACC has provided them. does it have any chance, for example, to improve their score if they, for example, do their revisions through use of computer instead of pen and paper? Because basically they have asked many questions from me on my PV that ask Joe that whether or not it is suggested to study using computer to do the revision kit, or shall we still continue, for example, doing the revision using pen and paper?
So absolutely, you do need to use the spreadsheet and a Word functionality to do these questions. So the reason I'm telling you this is because when they set the questions, and somebody like me would potentially be a sitter for them, they set the questions to time, and they see if that person can do it in the time period. Now, you are going to be quicker on an Excel spreadsheet doing a numbers question than you are on pen and paper, simply because you can add sum very quickly. It will multiply things. You can copy and paste the same function. So like if you're doing a variance question, you can copy and paste the formula that you've just done for one variance into another area, and then it's already been set up for you. You just change the numbers. So it's much quicker, and so they recommend that you have to do it to time, otherwise you'll feel on paper that you're not sticking to time. Now, I know that students do love pen and paper, and especially for the MCQs, it's nice to have pen and paper to do your workings. So when it was remote invigilation during the pandemic, it was quite hard for students to make that transition. So I do recommend trying to use the scratch pad, trying to use the online calculator, as well as your pen and paper, just to get practice. But if you're still using a book rather than looking at an online book, I think that's difficult too, because you're not allowed, you can't annotate the answer, the question in online, can you? So you have to get used to not annotating the answer, really. You can highlight, but you can't annotate the MCQ. So you're going to have to, I would recommend looking at the textbook online and doing the MCQs with a pen and paper working, but just so that you get that feeling of not being able to write all over the question. Exactly. And again, you can't write all over the question in section C either, so you need to get used to seeing that on screen and only being able to highlight, etc. But there's a limited amount on the CBE platform. There's only 3 exams, full exams, and there's only 3 past paper, section C past papers now. Okay. There is still lots more on the site going back to 2017, which are paper ones that you can do, but you can still look at them online potentially. But it's hard, I know.
A little bit, and I think that the students should adapt themselves using these new techniques and also using the area that ACCA has provided them. Basically, another question that comes to my mind from the side of the students is that, like, does the spreadsheet ACCA provides have all the formulas that is available in Excel? But the answer is not. Actually, it's a limited version of that spreadsheet. So students really need to practice to be aware of the areas that they have available, because maybe they go to exam and they face with lots of problems. So I believe even if they want to practice using their computer, they should at least check the ACCA practice platform instead of using the spreadsheet, because it is more comparable to what we have in the CBE examination.
Yeah, absolutely, because there's lots of things that you can learn how to do on the practice platform. You have to be able to write your sum function. You have to write it out. There's not an icon for it. You need to be able to practice changing the numbers so that you only get, say, to 1 decimal point or 2 decimal points, so it looks better. Your answer looks better. And you also need to be able to practice laying it out in a methodical way, so that if you make a mistake at the start, that will be followed through by the marker. They will interrogate the cells. We have been told that, but markers are busy. So please make sure you label things very clearly. So my example would be, if you're doing a cost volume profit analysis question and you've been asked to do the break even point, then I would write fixed costs, I would write contribution per unit, and then put the figure next to them. And then I'd do break-even point equals, and then reference those two cells, so they know that you're using two figures. Now, if one of those figures is wrong, then that will be a follow-through mark for the actual calculation. So it's really important to practice laying it out in that way so that they can follow it through. They won't want to hunt around, so don't put too much in a cell. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
So the most you should really be building in a cell is multiplying one cell by another. If you're putting lots in one cell, adding loads of brackets and adding all the way across, that's really hard for them to mark if you get something wrong. Yeah. So make sure you do a process when you're doing it. It's still quicker than on pen and paper, but it's the process that gets marked, not the numbers, shall we say. Okay.
So the process is the most important thing here, I think, compared to numbers, the process, as you always say.
The other thing which I showed people yesterday on my, I did a live tutorial to my students yesterday, is I showed them a not-for-profit prep question called Robin Hood University, which is a really, really long question and really difficult question, I think. And if it was on the practice platform, a lot of the marks were going for simply copying and pasting some of the scenario into your answer and then commenting why. And so that will save you lots of time. You don't have to type that because you need to practice copying and pasting from the answer into your word processor. So there's various ways to do that. There's Control-C, Control-V. You just have to practice and see which one works for you. Or you could do right-click copy, right-click paste. But that will save so much time because you can paste headings into your answer and you can paste scenario bits into your answer and then build your answer around the scenario. So you're getting those wonderful scenario application marks. So really, really important to practice on the practice platform. I think you've hit the nail on the head on that one.
Thank you very much. Another question coming to my mind, actually based on what you say, every section on the PM syllabus has the equal chance of being questioned by the examiner based on what you're telling us, because every time they are asking questions, they are asking new questions and not repetitive questions. So I understand that it is really important to put equal chance for each part that we have in the syllabus. Now, my question here is that if someone decides to study for performance management, how many weeks should he allocate or should she allocate for her studies or his studies, and what time a day he or she should allocate for his studies or her studies? How long does it take from someone to start PM and finish and finalize the PM syllabus before the examination?
So I really like my students to start the week after the exams. So, I mean, at least 2 weeks after, I'd like them to have 6 weeks of tuition time on PM. And what I would mean by that, it would probably mean a couple of evenings and one day on a weekend. Yeah. So a couple of evenings and a couple of hours and one day on a weekend. And then that would be doing, going through my lectures online and then the homework and submitting homework and then reviewing it and feedback. So trying, that sort of time period. And then once you've gone through the tuition phase, because that's all about learning the techniques, it's not learning not doing exam questions. You would do some exam standard questions, of course, but then you need to be quite solid in the techniques before you approach them. But then on revision, it's quite a toughie, but 4 weeks is of tough revision. That would probably mean, 3 to 4 nights in the week and one day at a weekend, or obviously a whole weekend. Because that's how long it will take to go through questions, review the answers properly. It's important to review the answers as long as you do as much time as doing the question as reviewing the answers. It's so important to, I would have got that. No, you didn't get that. Why didn't you? that's what you need to say. And then therefore you need to make yourself a crib sheet of things that you could do better and then learn from. And so that takes a lot more time. And so I would recommend a good intensive 4 weeks. And then there has to be a mock. You have to do a mock. It's a game changer. You've got to feel the stress of that 3-hour exam.
Exactly.
And so potentially you should save one of the, if you're not able to get a new mock from somebody, you probably need to save one of those exams and do them online, because you can assign it to yourself, do it, and then you can self-mark it under the mark tab. I don't know if everybody knows that. Yeah,
I'm aware of that, but the question here comes to my mind is that, like, for example, I remember when I did the examination in September 2018, I had a problem regarding constructive response questions, how to mark them. Like, it says that, for example, this part 1.5 mark or half mark, it has a guideline, but sometimes when we as students want to, for example, correct our papers, we're gonna be a little bit worried. Shall we, for example, consider this point or shall we not? What is your suggestion how to use that marking scheme? Basically, it is another question coming here.
okay, so the way I would look at it, and this is where perhaps a study buddy is quite good, if you haven't got access to a tutor who can obviously mark it for you and give you the feedback, which is obviously the best solution. I would try and get a study buddy or two, and what you need to do is send that to a study buddy and see, do they understand your answer? Can they follow it through? Yeah. So if it's the numerical one, it's obvious if it's right, you've got all the marks. Yeah. But you are allowed own figure rule marks, as I said before. So can that study buddy follow where you've made a mistake all the way through to be able to allocate the mark? The written section, I agree with you, it's very hard. The model answer is a model answer. It's so beyond what's required. Yeah, you must realise that. And so what you've got to realise is you're going to get 1 mark for a well-explained point. Okay? So do not give yourself a mark if that study buddy doesn't understand your point. You know, it's got to be understandable. You've got to explain that you actually know what something means. I always use this example, but it always helps. You know, incremental budgeting, an advantage of incremental budgeting is it's quick, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not going to give you a mark for that. All right. Now, you may have got half a mark in the past, but I'm being told by the examiners, Marcus, you're not going to get a mark for it. So I'm hoping you still get half a mark, but you know, you're not going to get 1. And so the 1 mark will come when you say why. And incremental budgeting is quick because you simply take the readily available figures from last year, take out some one-offs or apply some one-offs and apply an inflation rate. That's why it's quick. My parents, if I told them incremental budgeting was quick, they would go, okay, why? They don't know why, do they? And the other classic one is when they say it's easy. Well, okay, yes, but why is it easy? Well, it's because a non-financial person can understand the process without having to be trained as an accountant. They can understand that you can apply an inflation rate. So do you see the difference between those 2 points and why you would get full marks for explaining quick and easy, i.e. 2 marks. And if you just put quick and easy, you probably only get half a mark.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's another time and emphasis on the fact that it is better if we just check the answer key to the questions that we are solving, basically, because one of the areas which come to my mind is that, for example, we have some multiple choice questions, which, for example, choice is true, which question is, for example, false. We simply, for example, choose the right answer, but we need to go through the other 3 options that why they are false. I think it is really important, one of the areas that we have in the revision. Sometimes students, when they see that, okay, it is the right answer, let's go to the next question, they do not check the answer key, but there are some points there for the other three options, I think. So it can help them.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Because what could happen in the real exam is you could have the question turned around. And so the answer is not the one that you picked that time because it's a different question, but with the same answers. And so if you don't understand where they're false, so the question could be asking you in a slightly different way. And I know option C is therefore the right answer. And because you haven't gone through why they were false, you won't pick that one up. You've remembered the other one and you tick it wrong. So one of my really top tips, don't do this in the real exam because it but like you say in revision, is to the ACCA put something out there about 18 months ago saying in the PM exam especially that students are basically rushing through the Section A MCQs at the expense of performance. So what they're thinking is that I'm going to rush through and I'm going to get myself some time for that Section C, you know, where I want to spend more time. And that's fine. I agree with trying to try and gain a bit of time on it. But what they said is they were falling for all the distractors. So they could see that the ones who'd rushed through in, you know, half an hour were falling for the easy distractors. I mean, because they can see that, they've got the stats. So there's always one really obvious distractor, right? And if you're picking that, then that means you're rushing. If you're picking the two which are a guess, let's say, who aren't obvious distractors, then that's a knowledge issue. But if you're getting the distractor, then that's a technique issue, no, a rushing issue, because you know the technique, you just have not read the question correctly, and you've gone for product B's ABC costing and not product A, for instance, or you've done a learning curve question and you've picked the time and not the hourly rate and not the hourly cost. Yeah. So you've done a wonderful learning curve question. You've got the 100th unit and it said it was 11 minutes. Brilliant. Oh, 11 is there. Right, I'm ticking it. But what you haven't realised is you need to apply the labour rates to get the hourly cost. And that was the right answer. Annoyingly, you fell for the distractor. And that's just because you're rushing. Yeah. And you're not doing it carefully. So, that's really annoying for students who knew it's so frustrating for me when I see that in my mocks, because they know the answer, they know the technique, and that's what we're testing. And what they've fallen on is reading the question carefully.
Exactly. Joe, I just understood that you told us that it is better if you have made a mock examination. It is good for them to be corrected by a study buddy that we have. Now, does FME or even your website provide any service with regard to the mock examinations to the students? Like, for example, they register to be corrected by a tutor or yourself?
Yes, so we all offer a mock only course, and everybody's is slightly different. So I can only talk to my own. But my course, you get put on a proper course, and it starts for the March sitting. It starts this week. It's open this week, and you basically get an independent mock on the Test Reach platform. So you will do it on the actual CBE platform. We're probably one of the only providers that really do this. We trailblaze using the Test Reach platform. And part of the course is actually doing it. You get personalized feedback. You have access to a proper debrief of the mock. Some tutors do live debriefs. Some tutors have done recorded debriefs. I do Q&A sessions after the mock. I actually do 2 mocks because, and why do you think I do 2 mocks? Because we can't predict what's coming up in the exam. So I really want students to do 2 mocks, which are completely different and testing different subjects, if you see what I'm saying.
Yes. I see.
Because something like tax, for instance, you know you're going to get a personal tax comp, you know you're going to get a corporation tax comp, but in PM you don't know what you're going to get. There's 12 topics and there's variance within these topics. I do joke about this, but more variance in the PM exam than COVID. Haha, shouldn't say that, but the point is, what I'm trying to say is the mock is really important because it shows you how well you're going to do on the things that you know, right? So a lot of people may have revised all of advanced variances, and I give them an advanced variance question, and if they can do it, then they know that they're good at revising. They've worked the techniques. If they haven't revised advanced variances and then do the mock, then of course, then they don't know whether they've done very well or not. So it's being able to see, it's being seeing the fruits of your labour. So if you're still going to an exam into an exam environment, doing an exam question, and you've revised that topic and you don't do very well in it, then there's something wrong with your revision, and we can correct that and resolve it before the real exam. Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
And my question here, because the live session is recorded and then we will share it with other students around the globe and also on YouTube, how can they register for this mock examination? Could you please provide the website link and the other things so that they can find it? Because you say that they still have chance to register for the mock examinations for their March sitting.
Yeah, they can register for the mock exam all the way up until midweek next week. So it's on FME Learn Online. And then you look up Joe Tuffle PM Tutor, and it'll be my mock course. I mean, I can share the link with you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure how that's going to work. So that really worked, and also I think there's links in my bio. I've got Linktree in my bio, which gives links to all my Instagram, my YouTube site, my website, and the FME site. So I have my own website, but all bookings are done through FME because they're our platform that we sit on, or our courses all sit on the FME platform.
It's good. Thank you very much. If you just share those links with me, I also share it with the students, and they can follow you so that they can access the links on your page as well. What other things you want to suggest to students as tips? Do you have?
Yeah, so I do have quite a few tips. So one of my top tips for PM is basically have a game plan when you're going into the exam. So I really like, it might not work for some, but I really like the game plan where you do section A first. It's a settler. Then I would do section C, and then I would do section B. Now the reason is because time after time in mocks, the performance on section B is always marginal compared to the performance that students have on section A and section C.
Does it have any reason that this happens?
Well, the reason I think it happens is they are case study questions, and they're basically there's a lot of narrative there to decipher often. And the 5 questions, some of them are relating to some of the narrative, and some just aren't. But it takes you time to read through the narrative, doesn't it? And then you've got to then look at the questions and relate it and find the right area. And I think students also are looking at their time thinking, oh, this first question's taken me 5 minutes. Oh, and then they start panicking. And so so section B, I really feel you need to leave to last because I don't want you to panic. It's better to panic at the end of the exam rather than the middle of the exam, because section C is your bread and butter. It's the way of getting through this exam. You've got to do a good section C, otherwise you never pass. So with these section B, what I do recommend is you see the questions as 18 minutes. So all 5 questions need to take 18 minutes, not each individual question 3.6 minutes. All right. So at least two will be discursive questions, which you should be able to do relatively quickly, but don't rush them.
Yes, because we're gonna face with problems.
And one of them, and the case in point is this Sweet Treats Bakery, which is one that's on the CBE side, will take a long time. And you'll quickly realize which one that is in the case study. So leave that till last, because they're all independent questions. You shouldn't be having to work out something from one that you use for another. You shouldn't be having to do that. So they're all independent questions. So if you see the calculation question is, oh my goodness, this is going to take me a while. I'm not really sure what I'm doing. Right, I'm going to do the other four first. Then I'm going to see how much time I've got left. And I'll give it the full 6 minutes that I've got left. If I can't get the answer out in that time, then it was only 2 marks and I haven't jeopardized the rest of my exam trying to, or the rest of that question because I left it till last. Yeah?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have a question from ACCA.pack, if I don't make a mistake. How to increase 45 marks to 50? Any marginal tip, any magical tip for that?
Right,
So
45, then knowledge isn't your problem. Okay, you're getting 45, then it's exam technique's your issue. So what I suggest is you do what I say, go and do A, then C, then B, and you need to stick to time. So when you're doing section A questions, don't rush. That's what do not rush them through. You may think you know the answer because it was similar to one before, but you've got to go through the technique and the process and really carefully go through them. Flag the difficult ones, which might take time again. Again, see it as 50 minutes that you've got to do it. Flag the difficult ones. Feel calmer as you go through the easier ones. There's easy marks in every exam. You should be able to get those easy marks. I saw my daughter do it in a mock sat next to me. She walked the talk, she did it. She went through every single easy question, calmed herself down. I thought, I've banked at least 20 marks. I'm calmer. Yeah, I'm calmer.
I understand.
Now I'm going to go back to the stressful ones and see if I can see them in a better, calmer light. And that your exam technique, you'll see your marks improve. I think you may be trying to question spot if you're 45 marks. So I think you can't. You've got to go through every part of the syllabus and at least try and do one question on each type of question in the syllabus for section C. Now, I'm sorry you won't get the same question, but you'll get the same technique and the same theory. And so you'll spot ways of getting the easy marks. And so the classic one in the written section is people don't write enough. And I've talked about this. It's, you say you're doing a pricing question and they've asked you, this is a new product on the market. Which pricing strategy should they use? Penetration pricing or market skimming? Can you explain? And all they do is explain market skimming and penetration pricing and forget about actually giving an opinion.
Exactly.
So by means, write out those theory points, and so you've banked half the marks. But then go back and insert the scenario points by copying and pasting from the scenario where they fit. And for instance, penetration pricing is better for elastic products. If it says it's an elastic product, then paste that in. It says it's an elastic product, so that would appear to be penetration pricing, and then it'll say something like, I don't know, short life cycle, which is better for market skimming. So you paste that bit into that area. So it's getting the exam technique, because I'm sure the knowledge is there with 45%. It must be, but I think you're failing on the exam technique. You're either falling for distractors or you're not writing enough in section C. Yeah. Is that helpful?
Yes, I think it was quite helpful, but I hope that we could have answered the question of that person. He was, or she was liking, so I think she could get the answer to that question. Now let's give students time to ask their questions. If students you have any question, you can type it down so that we can answer the questions. Also, you can use the question box so that we can share the question on the screen, and we too can answer the questions. sorry, I need to do this part in فارسی as well for our فارسی attendees. اگه بچه سوالی دارین میتونین بپرسین، حالا چه به فارسی چه به انگلیسی من ترجمه میکنم براتون که جوابشو داشته باشین. Yes, hopefully ACCA PAC could get his answer.
Yeah, good.
So I just mentioned to the students that they can ask their question even in Farsi so that I can translate it for you if they, for example, have any problem in that respect. And
I do have one other tip quickly. We're waiting for questions.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, one of my other things, it comes from the financial management exam, and it's a thing called a future. And what you've got to think about with the PM exam is, I don't like to use the word bet, but you need to plan to win, shall I say. And what you need to do is you need to plan to win in the case that if you don't like a topic, right, nobody likes not-for-profit questions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can plan that will come up, right? And so therefore you need to do them, and you need to learn how to do them effectively. And therefore, if it does come up, you win because you've got it, you've done it, and you're working out to do it. But if it doesn't come up, you've obviously got the topics that you do like. So therefore, you have won again. So do not shy away from topics that you don't like, because you can, honestly, they will come up. And I think, so that is something that I would concentrate on, things that you don't like, because it's so easy to just go, oh, I'm just going to go and do another one of those questions. Oh, I'm just going to do more MCQs. I can't be bothered to do any section C questions. That's not going to help you in the real exam, promise. Is it better
Thank you.
PM before financial management? I think it is better to take PM before financial management, because I think PM is more akin to the studies that you've done previously. Financial management is taking things to, I would say, more conceptual. I teach both, and so I think it is better. I think students do well if they do PM first and then financial management. They use this few similar techniques in both, but I think the concepts in financial management are harder. Yeah, like business valuations and weighted average cost of capital. I think the concepts in performance management are easier. The techniques are easier, but the questions are less predictable. Yeah. So
there are some areas, I think, in financial management which they can find in performance management. So if they have the prior knowledge of performance management, it can help them in financial management, like EOQ, economic order quantity concept, and the rest of the things, both in management account and performance management, they are going to be repeated. I think if they firstly pass performance management, would be better for them, because the concepts are going to be understood more clearly.
Yeah, because performance management does sensitivity analysis, risk and uncertainty, in a lot more detail than financial management. And so when you come to financial management, you won't get taught it as much detail. And so if you've got that understanding of it, then you're able to take that, for instance. Performance management do a much more in-detailed review, shall we say, of companies, looking at ratio analysis, etc. It's much bigger in this exam, but those techniques are still used in financial management. So if you're good at them in performance management, you'll fly at financial management. It's just a little different take. It's doing it from the shareholder's perspective, the investor's perspective, often, yeah. So and looking at risk in much more detail, like gearing risk and things like that. But if you've learned how to state what and why, have I said that yet? Probably haven't.
No.
So when
you have not. It's new.
You need to state what's going on. Turnover is going up by 3%. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? That means it's good news. It's either volume going up or price going up, yeah?
Yes.
And why? Why is it going up? And then you go and find out in the scenario which one it is. Have customers' orders gone up? Have prices been put up? Is inflation going up by 4% and they're only going up by 3%? In real terms, that means they're not going up in terms of turnover, because inflation is all of it. So those are the things So it's state, what, and why is 1 mark, unfortunately, because you've already got the calculation mark, the 2% of turnover going up, in your table of calculations. So you're not going to get it again when you state it in your written section, but you need to state it to be the builder mark, to be the builder to get the final mark for the state, what, and why. Yeah. So you will definitely not get a mark, because you've already got half a mark for the calculation by saying turnover is going up by 2%. This is an improvement. You won't get marks for that at all. You will only get a mark for saying turnover is going up by 2%, and this is because sales orders are going up. They've introduced a new product that seems to be launched on the market, and everybody's demanding it. Do you see the difference? Yeah.
Yes, I understand. Yeah. No, I see. I totally understood. We have another question from ACCA PAC. It says, in theoretical area, I know concepts, but he's not applying as examiner required. How I overcome? I think you answered this question at the beginning of the live session.
Yeah. Yeah. If you know the concepts and you're not able to apply them to the question, then you need to write out the concept on a piece of paper and then redo the question following the concept, putting the numbers in, and then keep that process, and then go to another question and see if you can take those numbers and those points and fit them to the same process and the theory. You may not be getting exactly the same you should be getting the same answers in the numerical bits, but you won't necessarily be getting exactly the same answers as the examiner. But as long as you've explained your point, you will get a mark. I did the most recent exam. Well, a good one is Flag Company, which is on the recent exam to do. That's a performance evaluation question. I did different ratios to the examiner when I did the question myself. Well, I did similar ratios, but I explained things in a slightly different way. But I still would give myself the mark, because that's my explanation based on what was in the scenario. And so you would still get the mark. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. And so it's really important. And also sometimes you may do question in a slightly different process, but you still get the same answer. That's absolutely fine, as long as you've shown the process.
That's good. Thank you. Through the 3 days to the exam starts. They have been, I couldn't get exactly what he's asking, but it says that we have been understood that 3 days prior to the examination day would be the best opportunity and best time to do the mock examination. Is it correct in your idea?
No, I would say do your mock at least a week before. So my first mock is done 10 days before the exam, and
10 days.
The opportunity to do a second mock, because what you will then learn from the mock, and you can go and you can target areas that you didn't know. I mean, also the mock won't cover the whole exam. Yeah.
Yes.
So what I said before about the mock, it'll be, have you revised those areas and did you still get it wrong? Then that's telling you that you're not revising effectively and you haven't learnt it effectively. And that will give you an indicator that I may not have also revised that area correctly. So I need to readdress why I still wasn't able to do that question, even though I thought I knew the subject. So
because doing the mock examination is not that simple. We need to revise after that. We need to understand which areas we have lack of knowledge, we have lack of technique, so that we can improve it. So I think 10 days is more wise compared to 3 days. Yeah,
10 days full. And also when I do a mock review, I rewrite answers. So if you said just this, so for instance, if they just said quick and easy for the incremental budgeting, I would say you're not getting the mark, but if you'd written this, then you would have got a mark. Yeah. So again, it's really important to have it marked by somebody, and they're saying, what you don't want a marker to do is just give you a mark. That is a no-no. So I do it for the ACCA. I'm one of their tutor gurus, but I actually do it for FM for the ACCA. And I did a mock course for tutors, and I've also did it last sitting. Remember they had this December mock that they put up there, an extra mock for students. And when you mark a mock like that, the tutors have to follow 5 processes. Are they giving them an overall mark, and have they given them an overview of how they've done? Are they giving them positive comments, constructive comments? Are they marking effectively, not marking too harshly, and are they giving them some feed forward stuff, showing them where to go to improve, what other questions to do, and targeting their real weaknesses? Now, some people's weaknesses might be quite a lot, okay, but there's still something you can do with that student to get a pass. And it often resolves around, you haven't quite got that theory, so you need to go and recheck that. And that's quite a quick win, isn't it? Let's face it. The hardest one is the one that does know everything, and they just panic in the exam, and all their exam technique goes to pot. So those are the ones that need their confidence building up and saying you can do it. You just need to slow down and focus on the easy marks and stop worrying about the harder marks. When I used to do exams, I used to think, gosh, the SBR exam is the classic exam. There's some really hard marks in there, but there's some really easy marks. So you've just got to try and ignore those really hard marks and try and scrabble around for those easy marks. So if there's some really hard MCQs that you come up against, just flag them. Flag them. Because you're not going to get the answer anyway. So why waste time on them? If you get to the end of the exam and you've got time to go back and waste time on them, then that's fine. But you're better off moving on, getting on to section C, where there's loads of marks to be able to get, than sitting there stressing over these MCQs, which are just beyond most people, because they're just, you're not, some really good students, there's a reason why, a really good mark in PM is around 65%. And that's a really good student. That still means there's 35% that they can't do,
Yes, exactly. I understand. We have another question. I think it would be the last question because it's been around 1 hour. I don't want to take your time because I know that you're busy as well. Thank you very much, first of all, for the time that you spent. I think it is appreciated from my side and the students here in Iran as well, and the students who joined the live session. The last question is that which books do you suggest for performance management? I mean, I think we have Kaplan and BPP, but is there any other book that you can suggest or compare in comparison with each other? Which one is better, Kaplan or BPP in your idea is better?
So in my opinion, and this is my opinion, I like Kaplan for tuition. I really like the laid out. It's very clear to follow. They have test your understanding that you can test your understanding with, and the answers are at the back of the chapter. So you have to force yourself to go and look at the answer. And whereas I find BPP I think it's all there. It's all very detailed. It's all there. But the way the layout isn't conducive to learning. There's too much on the paper, and there is the answers are often beneath the examples, which doesn't help. But I do think BPP have a very good revision kit, and their revision kit is great because they have these 3 mock exams at the back. I know they're obviously in paper, but that's really good, and they do seem to have a lot more access to the older PM questions, which the Kaplan don't seem to have. So I would say it's good to have both exam kits, shall we say, because Kaplan's exam kit also has a really good section on walk in the eyes of a tutor or something. Yeah, so which shows you where all the easy marks are in the answers. So they're quite walk in the footsteps of a tutor. That's their top tutor. So it's much for muchness. And is less more? I don't know. Maybe the BPP has got too much in it, and you're thinking, you're just sort of rushing through it. Whereas if you've got less questions to do, maybe you're going to spend a bit more time on quality on them, you know, and really understanding them. So I would so that's what I would say. So I mean, if I was going to say, I'd get 2 revision kits and
Yeah,
so you,
exactly. I understand. Okay, thank you very much. I think we could cover most of the areas that we just discussed yesterday, and hopefully students also ask their questions and we could answer the question as well. Another time, I want to thank you from my side and also on behalf of the students who joined us. I will share the video on my page. We'll give you the link to the video as well to you so that you can share it with your students. And I'm going to share it on YouTube as well. So that many students can benefit from this. I hope that they can answer their questions post to watching this live session. Thank you very much for your support, for the time you spent, and it is highly appreciated. Do you have any final points to the students?
No, I just wish you good luck with it all, and you know, do not underestimate the PM mountain. That's what I'm trying to say. Please, please, please don't question sport. It's the most important thing. You cannot question sport. And thank you so much, Admin, for having been very, very. I've been enjoying it. I've chatting to you, and it's been great. And hopefully the students have found it useful.
It was a great pleasure for me as well, and thank you very much another time. So we're going to say goodbye to the students.
Yeah.
Hope to see you again soon, and I'm going to share the video as well. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.